Well, everybody, thanks for jumping on this call. My name's Andrew, and I'm down here in Hobart. Today's call is all going to be about activation, as I said before, and a bit of disclosure. Everything on here tonight, depending on where you're watching from, is more from an educational perspective. But there's so much information that you can gather from this call and our resources. Just contact the person who invited you on this call to get more information in a lot more detailed form. But today's more about activation and the core product that LifeVantage has. And I'm going to introduce to you a really good friend of mine, Dr. Ken, who's incredibly educated. That's a good word. Every time I talk to him, I feel like I'm getting dumber and dumber, but also shows you what you can achieve in your life. So let me just introduce Dr. Ken's with his bio. So he has 2 PhDs, a master's, and degrees in the field of psychology, neurology, sociology, immunology, business education, and is also a geneticist, and is also a Stray Day Award recipient for service to the scientific community. He's also ex-Defence Army. So welcome, Dr. Ken, to this amazing call where we're going to educate people on the benefits of activation.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me, Andrew. It's really, really great.
Let's begin with your personal story before we get into activation, because I think that your story is pretty strong and pretty amazing, and then we'll go down the path of explaining what they are. So just share a little bit of your personal story with the benefits of using Protandim InRF2. And now this is the short version. we're on a time limit today.
Okay, mate. Just one point of clarity. My background's got research in epigenetics.
Okay.
Genetics, they tend to be very protective of that field, and they don't like people crossing lines. So epigenetics leans over those lines. It's really it's a valuable insight. And when we talk about Protandim and cellular activation, it's very relevant. Epigenetics is a very important field. And you mentioned deep dive earlier. Well, I'll tell you a little bit about that deep dive. So, keeping it as brief as I can, I'm the son of a Vietnam veteran. My father was exposed to Agent Orange in Vietnam. He served with the 173rd Airborne over in America as well, so he had some special skills that were required all over the place. I'm 7th generation service person. We go right back to feudal England with knights and other areas. So when my son, who is now 21 years of age, when he was born with spina bifida, but it was a unique kind of spina bifida that wasn't in medical records. It was called lipomyelomeningocele, and I was already well and truly deep into academic qualifications. I probably had about 5 degrees by then, but his birth completely readjusted my perspective and framework, and I moved away from the teaching and psychology more into the neurology and genetics because I wanted to learn where did that come from. And that took me overseas to America on a few occasions. It took me into the research halls of England and even Canada to try to understand what the biomechanics were that drove the heritability of the conditions linked to Agent Orange and also trauma, the psychological trauma.
Yeah.
And when I coupled that with my own military service and the PTSD that I've been diagnosed with, I tried to look at what were the triggers in our genes. What are the switches that get turned on and off by an environmental event? Well, then, of course, my being a Central Queensland boy, I'm surrounded by cattle. And so I was doing a bit of contract work with Beef Australia and looking at the research into the soil biomes that go into the food that we eat. And I was going along to a conference that was being held by Dr. Peter Dingle at the time, who those who in the field will know that Dr. Dingle is a gut microbiome specialist and a very, very inspirational speaker. And as I walked in, these 2 lovely ladies, one called Madeline and the other called Charlotte, introduced me, wanted to shake my hand eagerly, pulled me to one side and had a few other words. And they said, would you be interested in having a look at blah, blah, blah? And I go, yeah, I'll tell you what, after the conference, let's catch up. So, and I I was skeptical. Of course, I'm a scientist. My job
Yep.
is to review, assess, and analyze. And I've been doing that for many, many years, a few decades now. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to look at the science behind it. And I did. And so for about 9 months, I deep dived.
Fantastic.
And then I gave it a go.
That's even better.
Yeah, it's been about 6 years now.
I'm 7, so.
Yeah, and I'm still giving it a go. And there's just more and more really interesting feelings, more and more interesting effects that I feel when I'm on, and I'm only on the core products,
Yep.
but because that's where my science is really pointing to, and I'd love to talk more about those.
Mm-hmm.
That from a biomedical, even an evolutionary perspective, it gives me the opportunity to break many generations of genetic and epigenetic switches that have created certain illnesses or diseases or even just ailments that have run in my family. I can be the one that breaks that cycle with
That's a,
this information, these products. That's
that's a great
powerful.
that's a great thing to do. And I think just tell us a little bit about what happened with your back. With the packs and
Yeah.
jumping out of trucks in the army.
So as
Yep.
a medic in the army, I've got to wear about 40 kilograms on my back. And in that 40 kilograms, in that backpack is all my medical supplies. And when you're jumping out of the back of trucks over and over and over again, that has, it wears down on the discs in your lower spine. It also, and that generates things like arthritis. Hands up those that have heard the word and are familiar with the feelings of arthritis.
Yep.
Well, when I was being discharged from the army and just in the army, we took a few tests, blood samples for arthrocytes in my bloodstream, and they were pretty high. I had arthritis in my lower back. And anyway, after being on this stuff for not long, I go back to more tests, and the arthrocytes are near a zero level. And the doctor just says, "Where's your arthritis gone?"
That's exciting, isn't it? There's
It. I said, "Look, I'm not sure. I'm not an expert in that area."
yeah.
And he looked at my hands. My hands have improved. He looked at my lower back. My lower back. Look, it does play up from time to time because I'm a silly boy at the gym. I might do squats a little bit too much, but that's all right.
Yeah.
That's good. But the arthritis is non-existent. The doctor said you're going to be in a wheelchair in about 6 months' time, and that was enough to shock me.
Yeah, that's scary stuff, isn't it?
I wish I knew about this stuff when I was in my 20s because that shock may never have happened,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and we just
along with
don't.
a lot of other things.
And the sad thing about this is the sense we're still the secret. People still don't know about life antics. They still don't know activation, which kind of leads me into my next question. How about you share a little bit about the difference between supplementation and activation? Because we have what's
Mhm.
called a significant point of difference. And maybe you can elaborate a little bit on that.
This has got to be the biggest and most important selling point of the products that LifeVantage creates. It's got to be purely just from a scientist's, a researcher's point of view. Supplementation is when you give your body something that it's not making enough of.
Hmm.
When your body can't make enough magnesium, you take a magnesium supplement. When your body's not making enough calcium or not deriving enough from the food you eat, you take an extra supplement. Activation has a totally different pathway to nutrition and health. Activation is where we wake our body's own systems up to make more of that essential nutrient.
That's
Our
exciting.
DNA codes have got the capacity to make all the necessary ingredients that every cell in our body needs. But as we age over time and as we abuse our bodies through lack of sleep, too much stress, poor diet, no exercise, the capacity to make those essential nutrients declines over time. So, and with our bodies, if you don't use it, you lose it. And the
Correct.
body is a creature of habit. Every cell is a creature of habit. So it just says, well, and there's a lot more science behind how often our cells reproduce themselves according to the blueprint in our stem cell DNAs. Some cells, like our skin, renew itself every 7 minutes. So that blueprint says, well, I haven't used it in the last 7 minutes. Why should I create that in the next cell that I make? Our bodies are creatures of habit. So over time, this stuff, the supplementation doesn't tell our body we need more of our stuff that's 100% genetically relevant to us. Nothing is wasted when it's activated. But when you have a supplement, a lot of it just gets expressed back out through our bodies because it's not genetically relevant to me. It's a generic medicine, or it's a generic supplement, which means the average person will use an average amount. Activation is 100% relevant to you and nothing is wasted.
That's so exciting, isn't it? Isn't that fantastic? And does that mean you could, in a sense, I guess, stop, like you say, the cells recreate? Does that mean they basically photocopy themselves? And if they're not activated, that means they slowly degenerating, and then that means the photocopy of the next the photocopy of the next cell, and the next cell, and the next cell, and the next cell is slowly declining. Would that be a good, you know?
You've just described the aging process, Andrew.
And I'm a mechanic, so there you go.
That's the aging process. You keep reproducing depleted information in cells.
So if we can slow that down,
they just photocopy themselves over and over again.
So if we jump in there with activation, we can slow that.
You bet. Even reverse it. Read the book.
I will. I've got a stack of books. I just can't get to them. So let's talk a little bit about the core product, or the first product that LifeVantage developed. So I won't go too much into the history, but it was basically 30 years of development, more than 2,500 formulations before it was released for sale in an open market, which was back in 2003. Since then, there's been more than 40 million bottles sold, yet we're still a secret to the world. What, I guess, can you describe what NRF2 is and what it does at the first product?
What is it? It's the tip of the magician's wand. That's what it is.
Wow.
NRF2 is an abbreviation for nuclear factor erythroid 2 related factor 2. That's a long scientific wind saying it's a regulator that our body creates. Again, you can activate this in your body. It's a regulator for cellular resistance to oxidants. And oxidative stress is cellular rust. If anybody has been outdoors and they see an iron bar and it's got these little balls of rust that appear on, not just the general rust across the entire thing, it's that too, but the little balls of rust that tend to dig holes in the iron bar, and you can flick that rust off. Well, believe it or not, because iron is a basic element for our bodies, and so is oxygen, which we get from water, H2O, right? The oxidative stress mixing it with the iron causes rust in our cells.
That's a good one.
So, yeah, NRF2 also, it controls the expression of a wide array of antioxidant responses in our genes. Over 300 genes are impacted by NRF2. 300 genes responsible for health, healing, and repair. Think about that.
That's like super.
It's a transcriber, which means it's a key that opens many doors for cellular health, healing, and defense against these attacks. It was first discovered in 1994, and since then, the scientific industry has just exploded, doing study after study and testing these theories, even trying to prove them wrong, and they can't. NRF2 is an essential molecule that the body creates in its own, but again, with aging, it slows down that.
So if we can hop in there with the Protandim NRF2, which is all natural, which we can talk a little bit about, is the ability to, once again, give it a helping hand. Like you said, the body knows how to do it. It just needs a bit of a trigger. So that's what we help out with. And as you say, it's through natural processes, and what we have is a natural product. So it's 5 ingredients, all herbs, but they've been synergistically blended to do the right job in regards to triggering that activation process. So once again, if we can slow down that oxidative stress, or we can slow down that rust, that means we can slow down, I guess, heading towards disease and illness. Would that be right?
And synergism is really critical here. You mentioned they've been synergistically compounded. Synergistic means each element has a compound impact on the next one. Because, like, for example, turmeric, and then you've got green tea extract. And it means that one impacts the genetic expression of the other, and it magnifies the influence or impact that it has at the cellular level. And we're talking about even the little components of each cell. Like, let's get into mitochondria here.
Mm-hmm.
This is a very valuable. A mitochondria creates ATP, which is what our body uses for energy. They're little powerhouses in our body.
Mm-hmm.
Every mitochondria and every cell, there are over 37 trillion cells in the average body, some more than others.
Mm-hmm.
But each of those cells has got between 2,000 to 5,000 mitochondria. That's a lot of energy that the body produces. That's a lot of ATP. That's a lot of NRF2.
Yeah.
And other essential nutrients and biomechanical bioelements that we need in our body.
Mm-hmm.
So synergism is critical here. If you want to get the same genetic switch effect from turmeric, you need to have about 20 teaspoons worth. And sadly, that's toxic.
Mm-hmm.
So when we use synergism, we don't need anywhere near as much. We don't need a toxic level in order to have the genetic switch effect, because it's compounded by the other elements that are inside this product. Another exciting thing, which has convinced me as a scientist.
Yeah, that's that's why I wanted to bring you on, because I know your background is so deep in science and research that, some people who can be a little bit skeptic on some of these things, struggle to, they believe what they read on Google, which I'm going to cover off in a second. But let's talk about that, actually. Let's talk a bit about the credibility behind the product and the individual studies. There's more than 28 published, and they're published on like an international database or a library, so to speak, called PubMed. So there's also another one which a lot of people aren't aware of, which is called Google Scholar. Now, as we know, everyone goes to Google and I nearly put a post up yesterday, actually, and I thought it was a bit blunt, but don't make life decisions based on what you read on Google. Jesus, it's not everything exactly accurate. So let's talk a bit about the published on PubMed. What does that mean from a scientific perspective, and also for credibility of the product, particularly if they've been done independently outside of the company?
Well, PubMed is an American-based national library of peer-reviewed journals that have been authorized by the federal government over there. The National Institute of Health operates the PubMed. So it's the Medical Publication Library. And to get on PubMed, you have to pass some very stringent testing and requirements.
Mm-hmm.
So last night, I did a bit of a deep dive just to make sure I got my numbers right. And for NRF2, there were 36,444 published studies just on NRF2 alone. On Protandim, now, you can talk about the significance of a brand name being on a national medical library. There were 28.
Yeah.
Now, comparison in Google Scholar. Now, Google Opinion, which is your main Google thing, which is where you'll get people's opinions of things.
Exactly.
Which is not something you want to, take as medical advice, for sure.
Yeah.
Google Scholar had 608,000 on NRF2 alone and 691 on Protandim alone.
Wow.
That was as of about 7:30 last night. So
good to see you doing your homework.
Yeah. I told you, I'm a scientist. I try to keep my finger on the pulse when it comes to this stuff. This is really relevant.
That's why I sent the questions through.
And my wife had to tap me on the shoulder and she said, "Get back up out of the rabbit hole. You're diving it down again." Because I started looking into some other research that's just been published this year.
Right. Okay. Well, that's really exciting to hear. Just touching on that, one of our studies, and I don't know whether you understand, or sorry, you would understand, but I don't know whether you've seen it, but the p-value. So this is the efficacy, I suppose is the right word, of our product. And in one of the studies, which was on mammals, it talked about, and this is really important, I was blown away by this. So out of 10,000 people, protanum only doesn't work in one. So it has a p-value of 0.0001. Now, my understanding from the same publication is that Big Pharma only has to achieve 5% or 5% people, sorry, the other way around, 5% of people in their studies doesn't work, which blew me away. So do you understand what I mean by the p-value? That's what they call the p-value.
Yeah, that's your efficacy standard.
Yep.
And it means, and we talked about this before, the difference between activation and supplementation.
Yeah.
That generically speaking, supplementation works for the average people. And that's why they use their P percentage value to say, okay, we've reached that percentage value. It is now a generic product we can put out on the market.
Yeah.
And that is why some people get sick from it. That is why some people have allergic reactions sometimes, because the P value is within the threshold of what is accepted by the pharmaceutical industry to be non-hazardous, but it can still be harmful. We saw this. Look, there's lots of instances around when we've had global health crises and even local health crises.
I can see what you're trying not to say there. So, okay, let's talk a bit. I want to cover off both the other activators, and you've already mentioned this. So, mitochondria. Now, tell me, if our mitochondria stopped working, what would happen to us?
Dead.
Correct.
Sorry.
Well,
bluntly.
Yeah, no. So let's talk about NRF1, which was the second activator that was created in the history of the company, and its focus is purely on helping the mitochondria. And as you just mentioned before, how important is helping the mitochondria as we age, and also what affects mitochondria?
Those are two huge questions.
Okay. Give me the summary.
All right. So mitochondria, from our evolution, when we were back to multi-celled organisms before we were human beings as we evolved, and this, of course, is scientific theory, something that made sense, is that mitochondria actually were creatures in their own right. They weren't a part of the human genome at all. But we found that there was a symbiotic relationship, that mitochondria could assist the mammalian genome as it evolved, and we were symbiosis together. We protected each other. They created ATP for us, which we used, and so now as we stand, we are united in life. Mitochondria itself contains many organelles within it, and it's protected by two membranes. There's an inner membrane and an outer membrane, and each of that, and the outer membrane has got 4 gates or 4 keys that are locked, and it's like a combination code to get into a safe. Now, NRF1 has that combination, and it unlocks all the gates in sequence, but more importantly, it unlocks the 4th gate, and the 4th gate is when certain elements within the NRF1, remember, they're transcribers, they're keys that open doors, just like NRF2 is, right? It opens that 4th door to allow optimal ATP production for the cell. It also has protective coenzyme protective factors for the mitochondria. So when the mitochondria dies, the cell dies. When the mitochondria is sick, the cell is sick. So NRF1 helps keep the mitochondria healthy and working at optimum levels. It's like taking your car in for servicing. Every time the car comes back, it sounds better, it smells better, it performs better. So NRF1 is a continual, perpetual service for your mitochondria.
That's so good, because coming from the automotive industry, there's a lot of people there that don't look after their cars, and they wonder why they cost so much more to fix when they don't do regular preventative maintenance. And my whole philosophy of life is all about prevention. It's been a big thing for me, coming from the Boy Scouts, be prepared. So that's a good analogy to use, and no, I think we all should use that in regards to talking to people about understanding how NRF1 is. And just one thing, I understand that antibiotics have a bit of a, they can actually affect. No,
Sorry, no, I'm just thinking about antibiotics. But go on.
don't they have an effect on NRF1? From my understanding,
Yes, they do.
yeah,
They can deplete the impact of NRF1. They can contradict what NRF1 is intended to do.
right.
Because antibiotics completely wipes out all biota in the digestive tract, all biota, including the good bacteria.
We don't want that.
No.
Okay, let's move on to the last one, which is, we call it here in Australia, which is SRT. That's its name here, but it's NAD. So let's explain NAD for people who even I struggle a bit to understand. So what does NAD do, and what is NAD?
NAD again is an acronym. It's for nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. So what that is another very essential element, and life cannot exist without it.
Right.
Nothing living can exist without NAD. It's vital for cell health and cell metabolism. Again, it declines as we age. When we're young, our cells are thriving with it. It's absolutely filled with NAD. And it gives us all that vitality. It gives us all the courage to do dumb things. And it also helps us repair when we've learned from something we did that was dumb. And that's why as we get older, it takes us longer to heal from those wounds. Bruises seem to last a little bit longer, aches and pains and sores seem to last a little bit longer because NAD has been depleted with age, right? Since 1906, just after the turn of the century, studies have shown that how NAD regulates oxidative stress in the cells. They looked at yeast and sugar back in 1906. So now I mentioned that oxidative stress. Funny, I talked about that earlier with NRF2, didn't I? Yeah. So these are linked. We talked about synergism, how things work together. This is why I love the protandem range. Right? It all works together. In the 1960s, NAD was recognized that it was a highly abundant in healthy cells, but it can be converted to many other molecules that are significant to the cell. When you combine NAD and the sirtuins, or the certs, and there are 6 of those in the family. There are 6 certs that we've discovered. There might be a couple more yet. That are highly effective in anti-aging strategy for the body. Think about that. That's anti-aging. I don't know about you, but I'd like to put a pause button on the aging process.
Yep. I turned 60 last weekend, and it's like holy Moses, even though I don't feel it at all. I totally understand where you're coming from. So keep on going,
Yeah. So the sirtuins are regulators, and there's 6 different species of sirtuins at the moment, and each of them have very different roles and tasks in the anti-aging process. So what we do is when we mix the NRF2 with sirtuins or NAD, we're creating an environment within the cell, within the mitochondria within the cell as well, that is optimal for genetic health. Now, cells themselves, the nucleus of the cell contains 24 chromosomes, right? 24. But in the mitochondria, that's where the RNA, not the DNA, because DNA is diarobic nucleic acids. That's when you get the 2 strands together.
Yep.
And they come mostly from Dad, believe it or not. But the mitochondria contain over 24,000 strands of RNA, which is just the single strand, the ribonucleic acids. But they combine to form most of your qualities, your hair color, your eye color, how many eyes you've got, skin color, and also internal health regulation systems. They come from mum. And that is mostly in your mitochondria.
Wow. Yeah?
So mitochondrial health, I love the way the mitochondria works and how it works for our body. It's a complementary system. It's a unison.
Right.
It's not, like I said, originally it was a foreign body to us. They had their own life form, they
Yeah.
had their own pattern and community, and they decided, hey, here's some evolving humans, let's partner up. So we've got to look after these companions, these partners. We've got to look after them, including the biota in our stomach, all the little microbes and the bacteria that live in there that feed not only our immune system, but they feed our mood every day.
Right.
So we've really got to understand that. And I told you, I did a deep dive down the rabbit hole. and when I was looking into this, I just really understood more the value of looking after myself at the cellular level.
Yeah, well, that was my next. I think my next question was something around that. So if you look after your foundation, like if you build a really good foundation for a house, it should stay forever, right? So if we look after our foundation at cellular level, how does that affect our overall health? It has to be better, doesn't it?
Correct. In my family history, the males have a tendency for diabetes type 2. They have a tendency for dementia, and they have a tendency for arthritis. I've broken 2 of those.
That's
2
fantastic.
intergenerational conditions that are genetically transmitted through my family history.
Yeah.
And I'm the one, I'm breaking that.
Isn't that exciting?
My son, as I said, with Agent Orange is a known mutator of DNA. And anyone that does you don't have to do a deep dive, but a lot of children of Vietnam veterans have got spina bifida in the boys and reproductive issues like polyovarian cysts in women, in the girls. When my son was born, as I said, I did a deep dive into looking at what the triggers were for that. He can break that cycle by taking this, and he is. So his children don't need to have the same condition that he had due to the Agent Orange, the mutative effects of that. So when we look at environmental events, environmental chemicals and triggers and stuff that we expose our bodies to, we don't really look at what's going on beneath the surface. We don't look at how is that impacting on my DNA and how is that going to affect my children, grandchildren, and their children. We think about here now. And this stuff allows us to stop those cycles and to reactivate, again, not supplementation, but to reactivate the core blueprint of our DNA.
Which means, if, like you said, if you're using a blueprint to build a house, you want it to be spot on. And same thing, this is a great way for us to understand how our body can, protect itself from. I think the body's amazing. It just needs the tools to, offset the aging process to help, as you say, break these cycles from intergenerational issues, or even today's exposure. Like I was educating somebody the other day about an app called Yuka, which I don't know whether you're aware of. I mean, that's a scary app. It talks about food, but also has cosmetics and personal products. But I like the way that they go into the actual ingredients, and then they go into the studies around those ingredients, and the damage that they can do is pretty damn scary. So, that's it. Yuka, good app.
Can you see it?
Yep.
The one with the carrot.
Yep, that's the one. Yeah. Scary reading when you look at the actual chemicals that are involved in some of the personal cosmetics that females use. So let's just finish off towards the end of our time here with a bit of a summary of the 3 products. And as I said to you before, I gave you a bit of homework. How can you describe these in a sense that somebody doesn't understand the scientific side of things? From a layman's term, what sort of analogy would you use to describe those 3 products? Do you have something in mind that you could share with us?
Oh boy.
One's the cleanup crew.
The way I describe it, it's like if you're planning to build a road to health, a road to optimum health and energy.
Yep.
Instead of taking a quick supplement like Berocca, which has a short-term effect and then the body gets used to it and you've got to keep taking more of it and higher doses to get the same effect, what you do is you've got to plan the road. So you do a bit of surveying. So NRF2 is like the bulldozer that clears the path.
Oh, yep. Great.
right? It knocks down all the crap in the way. NRF1 then lays the top layer that you could still drive over, like a gravel road, and it's a good gravel road. And I know the Army make bloody good gravel roads. They make good roads that are better than civilian roads easily, because they know the layout of the land, and they bend the road around according to the chicane of the landscape. It's safer that way. But then when you get the NAD and you stick that, that's like the bitumen over the top. That's the stuff that seals it in place.
Yep.
The three of them work together. You can just take the NRF2, no problem at all. You can take NRF2 and have positive effects.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah.
But with the three of them together, you've got the most powerful antioxidant tri-synergizing compounds around. You've got the cleanup, and you've got the resealing.
Yeah, that's a great way of describing it. Yeah, that's a fabulous way. And I think there's studies that show the percentage increases, which, you know, if you can get somebody to dig that up for you if you're a guest on here. But it's absolutely amazing how much percentage increase the three of them work together
in 1 month.
Yes. Yeah.
You can see you can actually have recorded measurable effects in 1 month.
Yeah. Isn't that exciting? All right. Well, I think that's come to our time today. We were on a bit of a time limit, so I just want to thank everybody that came on here today, and I hope you learned something. And if you have people that are interested in learning a bit more, we'll share this webinar with them. I'd love to do a massive shout out to my friend Dr. Ken for coming on and giving up his little bit of family time this morning. And thanks everybody for coming on. Thanks, Ken. I really appreciate your time and your knowledge. It's just awesome. We'll do one of these down the track, I think. We can always explore a lot more. So,
your turn for coffee.
Sounds good. See you soon.
See you guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye all.